So the next choice on my guilty pleasure marathon was another one from Series 7 Part 2, Nightmare in Silver. This one originally debuted on the 11th of May 2013 and was written by Neil Gaiman. And it's usually got quite a lot of backlash from everyone stating that it's not as good as Neil Gaiman's previous Doctor Who outing, Series 6's The Doctor's Wife. And I can certainly see why they would think that, but at the same time, I'm a bit of a sucker for a Cyberman story, and you know what? This for me fits the bill. So the basic plot of this one is that you got the Doctor, once again played by Matt Smith, and Clara Oswald, played by Jenna Coleman. They're essentially being blackmailed by Clara's two charges, Angie and Artie Maitland, played by Eve de Leon Allen and Cassius Carey Johnson. They have found out that Clara is a time traveller and are then effectively saying, "Give us a trip in the box, otherwise we'll tell our dad that you're a time traveller." Effectively blackmail, but they skate over that pretty well at the start of this episode. So the Doctor and Clara agree and take them to the planet of Hedgewick's World, the biggest and best theme park there will ever be, only to find it closed and kind of guarded by an arm by a military platoon. But they decide, yeah, what the hell, we'll make the best of it. And they encounter a few quirky characters along the way, including an eccentric collector, played by Jason Watkins, a man who refers to himself as Porridge, played by Guy Hygon Warwick Davis, and the captain of the platoon, played by Tamsin Uthwaite. But it's not quite as simple as they have to deal with. I mean, they have their day of fun. They think, okay, we've had our day of fun. It was all right. Let's head home. But the Doctor starts to notice something's not right as he has spotted mysterious insects around the place. Turns out that Hedgewick's World is also a base of operation for the Cybermen. And although the military believe that they beat the Cybermen 1,000 years ago, it's not quite that simple. As soon the Doctor discovers that Angie and Artie have been kidnapped by Cybermen and is eventually installed himself with the Cyber Planner, a kind of machine that, well, not really a machine, a kind of entity that takes over half his mind, and he has to play chess against it in order to win back his mind and stop the Cybermen once and for all. Now, this episode, similar to the Peter Capaldi episode Heaven Sent, which might be a bit overly kind referring to it as such, but it's kind of similar to that in that you're mostly watching Matt Smith's performance. I mean, this relies on a theatre technique you often see in kind of TV shows where you turn your head to one side and you're one character, and then you turn your head to the other side and you're another. That's kind of what they do here with Matt Smith's Doctor. I mean, they'll show the right side of his face, though most of it during a human side, and then when they show the left side, he has the kind of mechanical parts on it showing the kind of side overtaken by the Cyber Planner. And he does manage to act off himself pretty well. Now, I'll admit, with the Cybermen, I wasn't overly keen at first on the redesign, because this episode introduced a new redesign for the Cybermen. We've had one design that we've been having since 2006. This was the episode that updated it, and at first I wasn't entirely convinced by it. I'll admit that first time around. I kind of thought it looked like it kind of looked like Tony Stark built these Cybermen. You can see, okay, with the logo or kind of chest plate gone, and they now have a kind of light in the centre. It made it very look like an Iron Man suit, just version of the Cybermen. You can even find kind of doctored pictures online of kind of if Tony Stark built the Cybermen. But then again, I did warm to the idea over time. I mean, they did use these Cybermen for the next few years, kind of from 2013 until 2019. This was effectively the new redesign of the Cybermen, and I got used to it over time. I admit, first time seeing it through, it was a little odd, shall we say, but then again, it was nice to see. I felt that the previous design of the Cybermen was better because it was kind of big and bulky, and you really believed it was made of metal. Whereas these ones were so kind of fast and pliable. They were a little, yeah. Well, you understand. Another criticism that people had about this episode was they weren't keen on the child actors, Eve de Leon Allen and Cassius Carey Johnson. I can kind of see what they mean. I mean, with Doctor Who, child actors, it's always going to be something of a crapshoot, I'm afraid to say. But then again, it's not. I don't think they're terrible. I mean, I feel like with the 2014 episode In the Forest of the Night, I feel people would give saying it was worse than it actually really was. I mean, I personally don't think they're bad. I mean, Eve de Leon Allen does kind of play up the give teenage side of it of everything is awful. Why can't you just leave me alone type of thing. Whereas Kerry Johnson does seem a bit more kind of open minded, but then again, might just be the kind of point where you're younger and that's just what you seem like. Now, I can't tell how real this is, but I remember seeing a clip of Neil Gaiman from the filming of this episode, and it was said that he had said, well, I didn't really want to come back to do Doctor Who, but I did my episode and I felt it was okay and like, and then Stephen Moffat called me up 2 years later and was like, I know you said you wouldn't ever want to come back to do Doctor Who again, but do you want to come back and make the Cybermen scary again? And he was like, damn it, yes I do. To which you can argue how successful he was at this, but once again, this episode does have a few things that are pretty good. I mean, as I said, watching Matt Smith act off against himself is just a joy to watch. The Cybermen do seem a bit more sinister than they have previously seen. I mean, okay, well, the design I wasn't entirely convinced by. They do have a more sinister side, especially when Porridge explains that the Cybermen, they would be defeated and then they would fix the problems that they had, then come back and be stronger than ever. That is kind of a nice touch. I mean, I wasn't entirely convinced by the voice, but then when you see them kind of walking through the doors and advancing on the characters, it is kind of pretty scary stuff. Plus, I think another reason why I give this episode a kind of pass and why I personally enjoy it is I have actually visited part of where this episode was filmed. A few years ago, before we weren't allowed to go outside at the moment, a few years ago, I did actually get to visit Castel Coch while I was on holiday, and it was a nice place. I mean, I personally felt at the time, okay, it's like most castles I visited, but then when I was listening to an audio guide at the time, and I heard that this had been a place of Doctor Who filming, I was like, oh, cool. The Castel Coch had also been used in the Series 4 episode Journey's End, which is actually one of what I think is one of the best episodes of New Who, but this time they used it for Natty Longshoe's Comical Castle. And so, having been in a place where this episode was actually filmed, I do actually feel that was quite cool. And, of course, apart from anything else, the standout of this episode is Warwick Davis. Geek icon, you probably know him as Professor Flitwick, or Professor Flitwick, the Ewoks, or Marvin the Paranoid Android. Whatever you know him from, he's just brilliant in this episode. I mean, he acts really well with Jenna Coleman, and he's just a joy to behold. And he's another actor that I'm glad they were able to get into Doctor Who. Because, it's Warwick Davis. Anything he is in, that's pretty cool. So, Nightmare and Silver. I know I have said a lot in this video that it does have some problems, and they are legitimate faults, but as I said, I'm a bit of a sucker for a Cyberman story. Try saying that 6 times fast. And you know what? I count it as a guilty pleasure. Well, anyway, the next number on my Guilty Pleasures marathon is Series 4. And my one for that, The Unicorn and the Wasp. What do you think of that? Well, you just have to wait and see. Till then, see ya.